Welcome to the Board of Selectmen meeting, January 8th, 2024, 6 p.m. And we will start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I just want everyone to know that we have Diana Yaisley dialing in tonight, so hi Diana. Okay, so we start every meeting with public audience, and I just wanted to mention again that we put in our rules of procedure some decorum standards that we did not have before. They are not meant to take away anyone's free speech or First Amendment rights, but just to ask for a show of decorum given all the discord that's out there in public meetings across the country. And we ask that participants address the board, maintain a civil tone, and should not impugn the motive, character, or integrity of any individual. And as that, we'll just see how things go and decide how we're gonna handle that going forward. So right now I have two names on the Board of Selectmen public audience sheet, and the first name I have up here is Joan Coe. Joan Coe. Yes, I'm calling you up. And you have 5 minutes, and I'm sorry, we will cut you off at 5 minutes. If you want a warning, I'm happy to give you a warning.
Joan Coe, 26 Whitcomb Drive. At the December 18, 2023 Board of Selectmen meeting, First Selectman Wendy Maxtusis stated after my public audience comments that I have to work on the rules of decorum. Quote, "We are allowed to stop people from speaking and ask them to leave the room on advice of legal counsel," end quote. I don't have to worry about decorum. Wendy has to worry about her violation of the Constitution. First Selectman Wendy Maxtusis should resign immediately because of her comments restricting public audience. The Constitution's First Amendment is the fabric for a strong democracy. Eliminate or curtail free speech, and we are no better than a banana republic. First Selectman Wendy Maxtusis appears to have had a conversation with Town Attorney DiCrescenzo rules of procedure. DiCrescenzo's opinions is based on nothing but hearsay. If he had read the policy, he would have known that it violates the public's First Amendment rights. The Waterbury Board of Aldermen rescinded a policy that limited comments from the public at its meetings after the American Civil Liberties Union of Connecticut warned that the restrictions violated speech rights. The Simsbury Board of Selectmen should follow the opinion from ACLU and rescind the rules immediately. The Board of Selectmen have chosen Town Attorney DiCrescenzo to continue as Town Attorney. Town Attorney DiCrescenzo, over the decades as Town Attorney, has had alleged conflicts of interest and unethical behavior. Presently, there's a conflict with the Silman Group development at 200 Hop Meadow Street. In my comments at his March 14, 2016 Board of Selectmen meeting, I commented that Town Attorney DiCrescenzo was the attorney for the Silman Group and the attorney for Ethel Walker School during the land acquisition to the town. Board of Selectmen minutes, August 11, 2014, quote, "Authorized agreement with Charles Houlihan, Esquire, as special counsel for the purchase of Ethel Walker Open Space Parcel C." Town Attorney DiCrescenzo gave a contribution to First Selectman Mary Glassman's campaign. DiCrescenzo stated that Glassman was a friend and he wasn't concerned about the ethics violation. Another opinion from Town Attorney DiCrescenzo was all political signs had to be removed from attachment to trees because trees don't have First Amendment rights. Presently, the town has to hire an outside attorney to represent the town in the Silman Group, as Town Attorney DiCrescenzo was hired by the Silman Group for submission in East Granby. The Silman Group and Ethel Walker School should be required to pay the attorney fees for special counsel. After reading the rules of procedure, DiCrescenzo stated that he approved the content that was unconstitutional regarding public comment. It's time that the town rescind their vote for approving DiCrescenzo as the town attorney in the best interests of the town. Chief Bolter attended the December 18, 2023 Board of Selectmen meeting to offer background on the need for a babysitting service. Bolter stated that the records administration are professionals in his rebuttal to my comments. Chief Bolter is giving credit to his professional staff and then denigrates their ability to interact with the public with concerns about spreading gossip and be exploited. During the decades of me interacting with the records, there has been by the book interaction, no gossip, no exploitation. This appears to be a figment of Chief Bolter's imagination with any facts to defend this position. According to the Records Administration policy, record security, access to record files is limited to records unit personnel and other members of the management staff as directed by Chief of Police, end quote. The officers will give me a synopsis of the report, the same issues he is trying to correct, and the same discussion I have with Records Administrator. Why is this any different from communicating with the Records Administrator who are trained to disperse information? Chief Bolter's rebuttal does not make any sense. Why is a babysitting service headed by Lieutenant Chase, who is in charge of patrol, and not Lieutenant Semselski, who is in charge of records? Bolter's rebuttal does not prove anything, but appears that Bolter can't justify the babysitting service. It's not about the requirements of the Records Administration. It's about Chief Bolter placing preconditions on my access to public information in a form of control. Chief Bolter has shown his inability to manage the police department, and a no confidence vote from both of the officers exemplifies a toxic work environment. Recently, Sergeant Tumbly, fired by Chief Bolter, graduated police academy and is now state trooper. Avon does not pay any money to support services of AMR. Simsbury should not support Simsbury ambulance with tax dollars. All of my comments will be posted on Simsbury Pat and Twitter at Joan Co. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Joan, for sharing that information again. And it's Max Studis. I keep trying to share how to pronounce my name. Thank you. Sally?
Thank you. I'm gonna make myself comprehensible, I hope. My name is Sally Rieger. I live at 9 Stodmore Road. And I'm here tonight as Simsbury Board of Selectmen appointed representative to the Lower Farmington River and Salmon Brook Wild and Scenic Committee. And I wanted to make sure that you all know there is such a committee, because there are plenty of people in town who don't. And we do a lot of things. The committee was established in 2019 when the Congress of the United States voted to designate Salmon Brook and the Lower Farmington River as wild and scenic rivers. We are part of the National Wild and Scenic Rivers System. The committee is an advisory management committee with the mission of enhancing and protecting the outstanding resources for which the streams were originally designated. The Lower Farmington includes the water from shortly below the Lower Collinsville Dam, all the way down to its confluence with the Connecticut River, with the exclusion of the Rainbow Reservoir that's not like a river. The two watercourses are partnership wild and scenic rivers, a subset of all the wild and scenic rivers because they have no federally owned land along them. So they are managed by local communities and other stakeholders. The committee includes representatives and alternates appointed by the 9 riverfront towns, the Connecticut Department of Energy and Environmental Protection, Stanley Black & Decker, 3 watershed associations, and the National Park Service. It's an honor to have a wild and scenic river. There are wild and scenic rivers in 41 states and Puerto Rico, and to give you a sense of how special it is to have a wild and scenic designation, in 2022, fewer than 1% of all the river miles in those 41 states and Puerto Rico were designated wild and scenic. So we are part of a very elite group of watercourses. There are 2 important aspects of Partnership Wild and Scenic program that are particularly relevant to town government and also to nonprofits that we can help. First, the National Park Service can provide technical assistance to the town for river-related projects or potential projects at no cost to the town. So this service has been provided already in Granby and in Farmington. And the second, and particularly relevant to Simsbury because of the multi-use trail, is that when a project is being done on the bed or banks of a designated wild and scenic watercourse, it normally requires an Army Corps of Engineers permit beyond the local and state permits. The Wild and Scenic Rivers Act specifies that it's the responsibility of the National Park Service to review the Army Corps permit and to add any conditions to the permit that are needed to protect and enhance the outstanding values for which the river was designated. Because the permitting phase comes at the end of the planning process, to avoid delays and increase costs for projects, it works best when a town consults with the National Park Service at the start of the planning process. And there's no legal requirement that that happen, but it works better that way. And the goal of the Park Service is not to prevent a project, but to make any desired project compatible with the river's outstanding resource value. So our group has been working with Public Works and with Tom Roy for a while now so that we're in on that. The
So I just
committee-
wanna tell you there's a minute left.
Okay. The committee uses its annual funding on research projects related to ORVs and to award grants to towns and nonprofits for appropriate river-related projects. If you don't have in your budget the 25% for a match, we have developed a workaround for that, where we take the whole cost. After we consult with the town, we find a licensed contractor, insured contractor, and the town, once the project done, agrees on the contractor, and we move forward and pay for it all ourselves, out of our federal money, which is also your federal money. So take advantage of it, and I'd like to give you a copy of our annual report, if I may.
Thank you.
This is FY 22.
Thank you.
Just
You're
under
very
your,
welcome.
you got 10 seconds left, so good timing.
Okay, I'll be 10 seconds quick,
Thank
packing these out.
Thanks so much.
You're very welcome, Wendy. You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Good to see you.
I've got one extra.
Diane,
You can get them at the watershed.
We'll get one.
okay, do we have anyone else for public audience? Anyone else for public audience? I guess I'm supposed to say that 3 times, I've heard that happen multiple times. Anyone else for public audience? Okay, so now I'm gonna move on to the first selectmen's report. My top item is to welcome Mark Nelson. Board of Selectmen is welcoming our new Chief Executive Officer to his first Board of Selectmen meeting tonight. We look forward to working with Mark and expect he will bring with him some fresh ideas, given his experience in different facets of multiple municipal government over his career, along with key strengths in the areas of economic development and finance. He comes to us as the past city administrator and mayor of the city of Poughkeepsie. We are confident that with his leadership, our town staff will continue to deliver top quality services to our residents and businesses. We're looking forward to see what we can all accomplish together. So welcome.
Thank you.
Next Monday is the annual Martin Luther King Day celebration. I'm not gonna read everything in here, but it's 2:00 at First Church and everyone's invited to participate. This year's speaker will be Dr. Tayarisha Batchelor, who's the Director of Equity at Simsbury Public School. Maggie Seidel will be doing a reading and there will be some musical performances. I also wanna call out the Simsbury Farms AED installation. I include a link in my first selectmen's report so you can read the press release. But last week, well, it wasn't last week, it was December 22nd, Chris Boswell donated funds to install a AED at the park. And this is part of Tom Tyberski's vision for Parks and Rec to have these around town as they're life-saving. And there is now one at Simsbury Farms. It requires a dial into 911 to allow it to be used, but there's information there and there's information in the press release. Another item that I wanna call out is the 250th anniversary of our country is coming in 2 years. The DAR and the Simsbury Historical Society were asking me about it last summer and I wasn't ready to discuss 2026 yet. But there's a meeting later this week and information in the agenda in my notice on how to, if you wanna be involved and who to contact and if you wanna join the meeting. I also called out the Revolutionary War display at the library. I know Selectman Yaisley and Selectman Beal were there, so it was nice to have some representation there. I've not yet been there, but I heard that it's a very interesting display. Another item I wanted to call out is in tonight's agenda, we have some donations. And 2 of the donations are, one is from the Simsbury Volunteer Ladies Auxiliary and one is from Garrity Asphalt Reclaiming, and it's to the Keep Simsbury Warm program. So I just wanna call out and point out, and it's in my report, that Social Services has provided instructions, guidelines, income limits, and town policy on how to apply for these funds. And we wanna thank our generous donors that have helped make this possible. And then I just have some information on upcoming office hours, and that's my first selectmen's report. So I'm gonna turn it over to the new town manager.
Thank you very much, Wendy. Good evening, everybody. And so it's a great day for me. I got sworn in by our town clerk today earlier in this very room. And I'm so very grateful for the opportunity, looking forward to working with you all. Just before I get to some notes from departments, I just wanted to take a minute and thank everybody that's helped bridge the gap over some number of months now, starting with, of course, our interim town manager, Lee Erdman, Tom and the staff in the town manager's office. Particularly also has done a tremendous job covering that gap. Want to thank him and Franklin and Jess, of course, who I see here is with us this evening. So a lot of people stepped forward to work in the TM's office and lead the town through this period of time. I'm glad to be here taking the helm tonight and look forward to serving the residents and businesses and visitors of the great town of Simsbury. Want to thank the board for the great welcome basket gift that was on my desk this morning. Somebody must have gotten word that I need 3 cups of coffee a day, so I wanna thank you for that, and I will also just my wife wanted me to thank whoever put a Starbucks right across the street, and Dunkin' Donuts. So thank you very much for that. We do have some brief remarks and updates from departments that's in my report, and I won't read all of it, but wanna mention some of the key things. From Culture Parks and Rec, the Simsbury Farm Ice Rink will be open for a holiday public skating session from 12:30 to 2:30 on Monday, January 15th. Skating admission is $5 for residents, and if needed, skate rentals are also available for $5 per pair. The Simsbury Culture Parks and Recreation will begin registration for summer camp programming, summer swim lessons, and pool passes on Tuesday, January 16th at 6 a.m. Visit www.simsburyrec.com. As always, the Parks and Rec staff recommends that families log into their account at that website as soon as possible to check and be sure that their children's current grade levels are correct before registration opens. That's important. Summer programs such as Camp Stuff to Do, Awesome Adventure, and swim lessons always fill quickly, so our staff is reminding me to remind everybody watching and here in the audience tonight, don't wait, get on there and check it out. As winter weather has finally arrived, the Culture Parks and Rec staff has announced that the tennis and pickleball courts at Simsbury Farms are now closed for the season. I'm very sorry about that. Snow on the ground. The courts will reopen, weather permitting, in mid-March. And they also remind users of the Farmington Canal Heritage Trail that the only portion of the multi-use trail that the town plows during the winter month is along Iron Horse Boulevard from the intersection of Drake Hill Road to the intersection of Iron Horse and Hot Meadow. Couple quick notes from the library. The Simsbury Public Library is hosting an exhibit, The American Revolution, Artifacts and Stories from Across Connecticut. That's for the month of January. This is a traveling exhibit from the Museum of Connecticut Culture and History, generously sponsored by the Abigail Phelps chapter of the Daughters of the American Revolution and the Simsbury Historical Society. Please stop in to the Simsbury Public Library anytime in the month of January to see this beautiful and educational exhibit. It's located in the library's technology lab, which is on the upper level. Work has begun to refurbish the library's elevator. Thank you for that update. It's expected to be completed in 5 to 6 weeks. And we do understand that issues with the elevator have been extremely inconvenient. We apologize for that. It has impacted library accessibility and we're working on it, and just want to thank everybody for their patience. That's all I had, and for members of the board, I have not been issued a town cell phone yet, but I'll be distributing my personal cell. Please call or text at any time if I can be of any help. Thanks so much.
Great.
Back to you.
First report.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So we're gonna move on to liaison and subcommittee reports, and before I forget, I'm gonna turn it over to Diana, who's on Zoom, so then we can move across the dais down here. Diana?
So I have a quick board event update. There's actually a meeting tomorrow where there's gonna be a special education presentation from Katie Persula. Unfortunately, I am here and so I'm going to be missing that, but it is something that I'm familiar with, and I will be speaking with Katie and Matt afterwards to get updates and looking at the minutes, and I'll have more to report because unfortunately I'll be missing the meeting tomorrow. And then the only other subcommittee report I have is on the PAC, because every other meeting was December and we didn't meet since our last meeting. But I did have a meeting with the chair of the board of the Performing Arts Center and had a really productive meeting with him on December 21st. And they actually are looking forward to having me on as the liaison, and looking forward to having a good working relationship again with the Board of Selectmen, and I think there's going to be some good things that we can share together. So I think we're starting off having a really good positive relationship with the PAC, and there'll be more to come, especially in light of the $900,000 bond that PAC was given from the state. So this is all great news.
Okay, thanks. So since we're down that, and Kevin, how'd you like, anything you'd like to?
I don't know if anybody's heard, but there's an American Revolution exhibit at the library. And it was good to see Diana there as well.
Where is that?
So, but it is a pretty neat exhibit, and one of the fun stories that I got from having been there was there's a vest that's there that was worn by a revolutionary that one of our own residents did his master's thesis on. And so there's actually a personal connection to this state remembrance to the American Revolution. So the small stories in a small town, pervade. So anyway, thank you.
Great. Steve?
Nothing to report at this time.
Okay, I really have nothing to report either. We are scheduled for a personnel subcommittee meeting this week, which we may or might not be having, depending on getting information and some conflicting meetings. And as I said last time, finance subcommittee is pretty much waiting for me to get us together and schedule that, so hopefully that happens in the next couple of weeks. And one other thing I will point out is the Hometown Hero invitations went out. And it was pointed out to me that I needed to select somebody from an opposite party for the committee, which I did not do last term, so I'm just admitting my error. So I'm gonna have to, Curtis is gonna have to switch, and I've asked if Heather would be able to sit in, so we have bipartisan representation on that. I just wanted to call that out here because that was in the organizational meeting. And after that, I'm gonna turn it over to Heather.
Okay, I have not had any subcommittee meetings since our last meeting, so I have nothing to report.
So I was lucky when we had the zoning meeting. So there's lots of public discourse on this, but again, the reason for the meeting is for they want some adjustments to the rules, to the zoning rules. And so the board is meeting to discuss and have the public input on whether or not those 10 changes to the code should go through. They have until the 22nd to close the public hearing. Their next meeting is the 17th. After that, they have 65 days to make a decision. The police commission, they're down eight officers from what they need to be at. Because of this, their overtime is high. We just had a meeting before this. They elected a new chair, who is Travis Sturgis. Elected a new clerk, Tanisha Grant. And they also voted to increase the hours for a part-time records clerk, 10 additional hours per week. And then just some other news, the Simsbury ABC House is gonna have their 50th anniversary on April 20th at Simsbury High School from 6 to 9. And then I wanted to congratulate, this weekend I got the joy of going to the Simsbury High School Hall of Fame induction.
Oh, cool.
And so former Selectman Tom Vincent was elected, so
Oh, wow.
congratulations.
Great. I want to second the eight, thanks for the date on the ABC house. So, cause I had an ABC student back in 2004 to 2008, and he said he's coming in for the event, so
Nice.
I'll be in town. Okay, with that, now we are facing our new consent agenda, which has nothing in it this week, because last time we voted, or I asked to move things out of it so we could discuss it. And after speaking to Tom and I think it was Mark, we decided a better way to do it is after we review the items in here, we can make a motion to move things into it as we see fit. So it's the first time doing this, I'm going to suggest some things. I might propose a motion to move some items into the consent agenda, and if somebody wants to amend those items, then we can move forward in that manner. Unless, well, I'm gonna ask for a motion to move to the consent agenda, item D, which is the tax refund requests. Item A, which is the donation from the Simsbury Volunteer Fire Department, which we thanked in the my memo. The donation from the Archdiocese of Hartford, the donation from Garrity Asphalt Reclaiming, and the appointments and reappointments to various boards and commissions. I did have comments on some of the minutes, so I was not planning to move them in. So,
Question,
yes,
well, the question is, 'cause are you under appointments and resignations? Cause that was a separate agenda item, we're gonna move to put that as part of the complete consent agenda now, I just wanna clarify.
I'm making that motion. If people want to amend to take that out, they're welcome to do that.
Okay, thank you.
So,
So moved.
okay, any discussion on that?
Which items are in the consent agenda now?
Item A through D and appointments.
Oh, the appointments. Thank you.
I'll second.
Okay, a second, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, aye, okay, so that's 6-4, so those, I have something. Okay, so now we're moving on to the 2004 Simsbury Farms Golf fee schedule. We have Tom Taberski here from Parks and Rec. I would usually turn it over to Tom for questions from the board. So if someone has a question, if you'd like me to recognize you to ask questions for Tom, that's pretty much how we've been handling it.
Couple questions.
Okay, sure.
I know that you had sent some information, but the question I sometimes get is just there's no discount for residents versus non-residents.
Sure.
And is there a reason why we don't do that?
Yeah, so four years ago, we made the decision and the previous board at that time approved it. We went to what's called a one rate system. So for the daily walk-up fees, 9 holes, 18 holes, weekdays or weekends, one rate means there's no difference between a non-resident fee and a resident fee. We actually raised the resident fee up a couple of dollars, kept the non-resident the same, and so it kind of almost met in the middle. There is still a resident discount for season passes at all the different levels, kids through seniors on both sides. So a resident can get a break on the rates by buying a season pass, that discount still applies, and many of our residents who purchase those season passes take good advantage of that break and pay less per round over the course of the season. The reason for the one rate plan is many of the other municipal courses in the area were doing it. The golf course's budget is set up to generate a profit to sustain the recreation budget. I always use the example that if if the golf course is operating like a business, we wouldn't tell Fitzgerald's down the street to charge somebody from Avon more for a gallon of milk. Fitzgerald's goal is to sell as many gallons of milk as possible. That's what we're trying to do with the golf course, is generate as many playable rounds of the golf course as we can, both for residents and non-residents. The vast majority of our play is from residents. I would say it's probably 75% at least of total number of players up there are residents. But as I can tell you that over those 4 years, our number of rounds has gone up substantially over where we were for the previous decade. So it's worked, and it's working for the other communities like ours who have done that. Stanley and New Britain, Timberland Golf Course, I believe, is the other. Rockledge and West Hartford, same thing. They're all have gone away from the non-resident and resident fees for the daily walk-ups.
Thanks. And do you notice that the play, because I know we had the COVID high, right? So lots of people are playing golf because of that. But then now, are you projecting that it's going to continue to be that high? Because I know that sometimes it's.
Yeah, it's I kind of go back to early 2000s when Tiger Woods came on the scene. It reintroduced golf to a lot of people and brought people to the golf course. COVID was terrible on a lot of levels, but for golf, it reintroduced people to the sport because that's what they could do outside. That COVID year was the best year that the golf course had, in the previous decade, and we've only built upon that since then. We've started to level off a little bit, but we still have capacity to take on additional rounds. We're in the low 40s right now, 42,000, 43,000 rounds a year. We could easily go back up to the all-time peak for the golf course is I think 51,000 rounds back in the early 2000s, I think, late 90s, early 2000s. So we do have room. We've maxed out league play in the evenings. You know, the weather this past summer was very challenging, as we all know. I mean, nobody had a good weekend for about 18 weeks. So, you know, we still had a good year. We would expect a better year if if the weather's good, we'll have a good year. But COVID reintroduced golf to the community. People found it again. People fell in love with it again, and hopefully we're gonna sustain that. We do a lot. Our staff works really hard there to retain the customers we have. The town has invested in the golf course with the irrigation system. We're using better equipment. The Simsbury Men's Club has made donations. The Friends of Simsbury Farms have helped us with donations. If you haven't been out there, it's a beautiful course, and you know we're gonna continue to try and improve it. And as we all know, Simsbury is not the easiest place to get to. You know, if you're an out of towner. So we wanna be able to get people here for one thing, and then when they see the course, we hopefully, keep their hook at that point, and then we'll make that other trip back here.
Yeah, no, it's a great course, I love it. That's all I got.
Any other questions?
I have a quick one, it's financial in nature. I won't leave with the answer to my own question. Will these increases directly offset the increases in the salaries of the golf course personnel?
They're meant to, but it's not just the salaries, it's also the cost of parts for the mowers and the tractors they use, and then also the cost of agricultural supplies like grass seed, fertilizer more than anything else. Those things have gone up substantially the last few years. So
That's my point, these seem like minimalistic increases.
it is, but when you add it up over 40,000 rounds, it adds up.
Okay, so there's
so-
enough here.
Yeah, we think, I mean, I tend to budget conservatively. I'm not gonna, we use a 4-year average of the rounds and of revenues to come up with those fees. So we don't take our best year and say, okay, this is enough. We take that average as the most recent 4 years to determine will these be enough? And if we have a really good year with great weather, we'll generate more profit. If we have that down year, we won't be as bad as the down year as it could have been. And also with the Simsbury Farms Revenue Fund, the way it's set up right now, the kind of the consensus we've had with the boards the last couple of years is I've been proposing, as that fund balance has grown because the golf course has been doing well, we keep a minimum of $200,000 to $250,000 in that fund balance to cover should it be a really bad year at the golf course. I mean, we're all hoping that it's never gonna come to that, but the number over that $250,000 would be funds that could be put back into golf course projects so that we're not coming to your board and asking for taxpayer dollars to improve the golf course.
That answers it, thank you.
Welcome.
Anything from Zoom?
No, I have no questions, I got them all answered at our Parks and Rec committee meeting.
Okay, and I was just gonna comment that we did, Tom, sent us the Parks and Rec minutes, and so this has already gone through the Parks and Rec Commission meeting. And also in conjunction with our golf course to make sure that it's not gonna really impact the number of people that come out or turn anybody away. So, on that note, I'm going to ask for a motion effective January 8th, 2024 to approve the Culture, Parks and Rec Department's 2024 fee schedule. Oh, am I looking at the wrong one? Yeah, I'm looking at the wrong one, sorry people. I moved my, I moved it on. That was the aquatic one. Move effective January 8th, 2024 to approve the 2024 fee schedule for the Simsbury Farms Golf Course as presented.
So moved.
Second.
Second from Kevin. Any more discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. Okay, the next item is the aquatic and park pool and camp schedule. So Tom, if you wanna lead in with anything or just take questions.
Sure, I think I'll answer probably some of your questions. The biggest driver in the reason in the camp fees and aquatic side is the seasonal workers we have. We have roughly 80 to 90 lifeguards and camp counselors. We've been heavily affected by it, just like if you have a business in town, minimum wage has gone significantly up. We went from when I started here back in started in this position in 2018, I think minimum wage was $10.10 at the time or just over. Now it'll be $15.69, it is $15.69 right now. So that's been the reason for the biggest increase in day camp fees over that period and aquatics fees. We do feel we're at near the tipping point for the pool admissions at 7 for residents, 9 for non-residents. So I didn't have an increase in that. And last year we tried moving the pool pass pre-sale up to May 1st rather than May 31st, hoping to kind of push people into buying their passes sooner. That didn't work. We sold less passes, and then we got to that first week in June, the first 2 weeks in June, and it was roughly 65 degrees and nobody wanted to get in the water. And by the time the weather improved at the end of June, people were just like, well, maybe we don't need a pool pass after all. So we're gonna bring that back to May 31st, allow people to get those passes and hopefully get that number back to where it was. Swim lessons are heavily impacted by the amount of lifeguards and teaching staff we have on the pool deck, so that's why you see an increase once again for the lessons. It roughly takes 3 guards potentially for every group of kids in the pool, so.
I have a question. How many annual passes do you guys normally sell?
If you give me 1 second, I can actually tell you that.
I'm curious. And do more people buy daily passes just because?
We went down last year a little bit on our daily passes. I mean, we had, let's see. The 4-year average for the resident family of 4 passes is 507 family passes. So you multiply that times 4 passes, that's roughly 2,000 or so people. If you want to, I can give you the non-residents family of 4 is 45. So there's a significant difference there.
Yeah.
We did raise the non-resident fee up quite a bit. That's another, we were talking about the golf. We recognize the pool is an asset to the town. A lot of people want to use it. We did make it a little bit less, I don't want to say welcoming. We made it a little harder for non-residents to attend the pool, especially during COVID. During the COVID years, we had limited it pretty much. That COVID year there was no non-residents allowed. But when we do get some people up there, but again, the biggest driver of any fee increase on the rec side is going to be the seasonal workers we have. So.
Okay. All right, thanks. Any more questions from the board?
I have a question. How are you anticipating staff?
We anticipate it's going to be very
This year.
difficult again this year.
Gotcha.
I had a conversation with Wendy today. It's been very. I was relating a story when I was working here in a different capacity, in the rec supervisor capacity back in the early 2000s. I would maybe have 3 or 4 jobs open out of 26 or so camp jobs, and we'd have roughly 90 to 110, 80 to 110 applications every year. I mean, I have to spend a lot of time weeding, and I always gave every kid who wanted to interview a chance. The last 3 years, as minimum wages increased, we've seen applications drop significantly. Last year we had roughly 8 to 10 positions on the camp side to fill. I think we overall had maybe 21 applications, and roughly 13 of them responded to an interview request. So if you came in for an interview, you pretty much got hired last year. They're all great kids, but we would like to be able to pick from a bigger pool. What we've definitely seen is a drop in the college applications. We used to get a ton of them from college kids, and very rarely did we hire 15 and 16-year-olds for day camp jobs. Those were more the volunteer positions, but now we're kind of having to fill some positions with 15, 16, 17-year-olds versus the college staff. So when we get those kids, we try really hard to hold on to them for 3 to 5 years. I mean, it wasn't uncommon back in the day to have a kid start as a volunteer and stay right through a camp director. I had a number of kids who worked here for 10 years or so through college and their teaching careers, but it's been much more difficult. So we're going to try some different things this year with social media, possibly going to the high school and setting up a table at lunchtime, and
That's a good
That's
idea.
clever.
so see if it works. I'll let you know.
Okay, great.
That's great.
Along those lines, actually, I have 2 daughters right there in high school. Last year they wanted to be lifeguards, but you have to go through a process where you have to go through kind of like the YMCA for them to teach you.
Yeah.
So you thought of like maybe having something where you can, any high school kid that wants to.
We actually did last year. You're right. You have to have lifeguard certification, and you can't get that certification until you can't take the lifeguard test until you're 15 years old. You could potentially start the class at 14, but you have to be 15 by the time you take the exam. Over the winter, the YMCA in Granby does offer lifeguard training classes. There are, I can't remember if Westminster does it or not. Obviously, we don't have an indoor pool, so we're not able to offer our own. What we tried last year, because we knew the applications would be low based on the last couple of years, we offered kids could apply for a job. We'd interview them, and if they didn't have their lifeguard certification, we would put them into our own preseason class. So we actually opened up the pool to staff. We tried to open up the pool about a week early. and get those kids certified. I think there was 6 or 7 people that we were gonna hire at that point. We were gonna get them into the pool before the first Saturday of the season, and the weather was terrible, like 50s in the morning to a high of 62 in the afternoon. The pool water just wasn't warming up. So it was very difficult to do that. I'm not sure if we're gonna try that again. We do refer kids to other towns. Canton does preseason lifeguards in their outdoor pool. South Windsor does it there. We refer kids to the Red Cross website where they can find other indoor pools that maybe are offering it. I think Weathersfield does as well. What's important to know though, Simsbury is not alone in this. If we're looking for lifeguards, Granby's looking for lifeguards, Avon's looking for lifeguards, West Hartford's looking for lifeguards. So we're all pretty desperate. For years, we had this really good feeder system. During the summer, we do we do a June to late July class, or mid-July class, and a mid-July to mid-August, where we do lifeguard training in the morning, and we hire those. The vast majority of those kids get hired and they become in our system. What we're losing is just the college kids are leaving our system a little quicker, so we're trying to backfill them a little faster than we normally would. So you know, to answer your question, we do trainings during the summer. We tried the preseason last year, but if a kid comes to us and says, "Hey, I need this certification," we'll give them options to try to go find it somewhere during the off season. So.
Okay. Alright, I'm asking for a motion effective January 8th, 2024 to approve the Culture, Parks and Recreation Department's 2024 fee schedule for aquatic facilities and day camp programs as presented.
So moved. Second.
Whoever.
I think she fast and you seconded, right? Who's did you first?
I second.
Okay, Diana, you were first, so you must be in a time speed up there. Okay, Diana and
Sorry.
Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes.
Thank you very much. I'm gonna say goodnight.
Okay, see you, Tom.
Thanks, Tom.
Okay, so
Tom.
the next item, I'm not sure if Tom Roy is online or is he joining?
He is.
Here.
Good. Oh, you can see. Hi, Tom.
How is everybody?
Good, how are you? So this is the donation of a dial-a-ride bus to the fire district. It's a request from Tom. So I'm gonna turn it over to our Public Works Director to explain the item.
Sure, we have a number of dial-a-ride buses that are operated by Martel Transportation out of Canton. When this bus came up for replacement, it has 161,000 miles on it. And we originally looked at what we could get at auction for this I'm gonna say a gem. And we went through Gov auction, we ended up with 45 people looking at it and making bids, but the best bid we saw was $3,200. At the same time, Jim Baldus from the fire district told us that they had a use for this vehicle. The fact that we work closely with the fire department, they're a valuable part of our town and they can make good use of this. The recommendation would be that we donate it to the fire district. It saves us the effort of trying to market it to sell it again. It's gonna be in the community and it's gonna be providing a service to the residents of Simsbury.
Okay. Anybody have any questions on this item? All right, so I'm
I
asking,
do.
oh, okay. Okay, Diana.
So just a real quick question, and this may or may not affect anything, but it's just out of a curiosity thing. So I know as an individual, if I was to donate something to the fire department, for example, say I had a vehicle that I donated, now we're donating it to the fire district. They're not the nonprofit. They run their own. What I'm getting at is like I could take a tax write-off for donating my vehicle to the fire department. If we donate, and this just may be a bonus, if the town then donates to the fire district, is there a write-off we get for it? Is there some kind of credit? Like how does that work or is this a line item town to town donation?
I believe it would be just to town, and I don't think we would be able to, being that we don't pay taxes in the traditional
Right.
sense,
Correct.
be able to see any return on that. And I'd say we do things like this a lot of times with the Board of Education. We've transferred vehicles back and forth. And unfortunately, I don't think there'd be anything other than the additional goodwill of working with fires.
Oh, absolutely, and I just didn't know how line item to line item that would, if it would make a difference at all, so, but that's clearly a question, thank you.
Good question. Okay, I'm looking for a motion effective January 8th, 2024 to accept the transfer and donation of a decommissioned shuttle bus from the Department of Public Works to the Simsbury Fire District.
Make that motion.
Kevin, second?
Second.
Steve seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay, that passes unanimously. The next item is the we're happy to see this, Tom, this American Rescue Plan grant application for senior center improvements. If you wanna, I'd let you take this one too, since you've
Sure,
the application.
Great, through the American Rescue Plan, all of the communities in Connecticut are due funding or are eligible for grants for their senior center. In looking at this grant, it's quite sizable at just a hair under $60,000. We worked a little bit with Kristen Formack, the senior center. She had a number of projects that she was interested in applying for. But in order to make this easy in terms of applying and easy to receive the grants, we already had on the books an HVAC project, a very large HVAC project at Eno. It was being funded in this year's budget with cash. So in working with A. Merriweather, we decided we would apply for the grant to fund the HVAC improvements. Then that cash can be redistributed to the senior center for projects that they feel are more appropriate.
I have a question.
Sure.
So the money that's the $60,000, we funded that in the 23-24 budget, is that what you're saying? The
Yes.
stuff? So
Yep.
who decides, I guess, is it internal as to who decides the money that we approved for the HVAC as to where it goes going forward?
I think there would be an internal discussion between social services, finance department, and probably also Mark Nelson now that he's here, into what projects it would be used, but I don't believe it would go back through a more formal budgeting process.
Okay, but I would assume,
She's identified some of the things would be touchless water dispenser for the youth room, a very large TV and mobile stand that they could use for their programming, that type of thing. Where if we were applying for those individually, it would make the grant application process very cumbersome.
okay, so I guess my point is that we would be using the money for current priorities for social services that we did not fund last year. Or that may or may not be asked for this year, I guess, the other point, right? You're saying they're smaller items, they're on the social services list of to do as priorities, and this money is gonna be allocated to those priorities, not new items, I guess.
I would think it'd be,
Making sense here.
you know, they went through and did some searching amongst their staff and also amongst some of the seniors as to what they thought they could do with these funds. And again, I think if there was an interest by the board to see a reporting of it, I'm sure that we could keep a tally to make sure that we could demonstrate back how exactly the funding was used.
Okay.
If that would be helpful.
Well, I feel like we approved it in last year's budget, so it might be helpful to just know that where it's going for this year, not to create any work for anybody, but just as
No,
a.
I agree 100%. I think it's always be a great thing to say we got a grant for this much money and these are the things that we were able to purchase with. I don't think that would be a problem for the senior center staff at all.
Okay, great. Kevin?
Tom, did the HVAC work already begin over at Eno?
It has not. We've started the process in terms of we're working on consultant selection.
Okay.
Money that was funded is only for the design portion.
Okay.
And we're looking to do the construction not in next fiscal year, but the fiscal year after. It's pretty big, nearly $3.5-4 million complete renovation of all of the HVAC systems in the building. So it's a big project.
The application that you plan to submit for the grant, you're writing it to the HVAC project only though, right? You're not including the other projects
That
as
is
part of it?
correct. Yep.
And we already budgeted to do the HVAC work, and so this will be a cost recovery in doing that project, and you're thinking that since there will be a surplus in that line item because you're getting these funds, the senior center may be able to apply it to these other things. Is that how you're presenting it?
That's exactly right.
I don't have any problems with us finding the money and getting it from the grant. I see no issue with that, and I don't think it's necessary for the motion that we determine what those projects are, but absolutely we should do that. There's two parts to the motion that they're asking for, is that we move to apply for the grant And I recommend that maybe once we're notified that we're awarded the grant, then when we accept it, that's when we will have a discussion about how we wanna appropriate. So I would make a motion here, if it's in order, to accept to submit the grant application to the Department of Aging and Disability Services and to authorize the town manager, Mark Nelson, to execute the grant application.
Okay, I'm okay personally with making the full motion. If it's awarded, recommend said appropriation to the Board of Finance, as long as the town manager and they come back to tell us how it's you're asking that you wanna weigh in on how they use the funds.
I'm just saying,
$16,000.
it's premature to talk about how we're gonna, spend money that's come into the budget. It's already been allocated, the budget's been approved to do this work. We get the grant and now there's a difference in and what the budget situation looks like, cause we have more money in it. That's my perspective. That's why I made the motion.
Thank you.
With a lot of what we've seen, with getting our quotes and by the time we execute
True.
an increase, we might need these funds to actually supplement what we've allocated for the HVAC. So I agree with Kevin that we should hold back on the disbursement, obviously move forward with the procurement of the grant, but we should have more finalized numbers, I think, before we figure out where to spend potential
Okay.
monies.
Okay, so what I'm hearing is the motion we're looking for is effective January 8th, 2024 to submit the grant application to the Department of Aging, Disability Services to authorize town manager Mark Nelson to execute the grant application. If it's awarded, we'll move to accept the grant and authorize town manager Mark Nelson to execute all documents related to the grant award.
My motion is the first part.
Not even the
That's right.
execution of the
That's my motion.
grant.
Second.
Okay, is there any further discussion on that? Tom, go ahead.
Kevin, is your part about the senior center projects?
Yeah,
using
that's
those
all
funds?
after anyway.
Yeah,
Right?
so-
I'm just saying, we're having an allocation discussion now,
Yeah.
and I don't think we need to do that.
Because of I just wanted to point out that Kristen had mentioned that they were gonna try and have those projects that were originally gonna be for this would go to HVAC, and then those like the dispenser and whatever other things they have, they're gonna ask the trustees through one of the 4 trusts that we have for those funds to cover those projects.
Okay, so you've made the motion, the first motion. Let's just focus on the first motion here to submit the grant application. Somebody wants to second that.
Second.
Diana said.
Okay,
Oh, sorry Diana, I forgot about you up there. Any discussion on the first part of that? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye. Okay. I'm gonna ask for the motion to accept the grant and authorize town manager Mark Nelson to execute all documents related to the grant award.
So just a point of order, we don't have a grant to accept yet?
I would like to ask Tom, this is normal procedure for us to pre-anticipate the award so that when it comes in, we
This is
don't bring it back to the board.
correct. This has been our grant wording for the first 2 ones definitely. The third one, Amy had me add in November, so that way we don't have to come back to you as a second time to send it to the Board of Finance, but this has been our grant wording for some time now.
So I'm putting that motion on the table as I believe I'm allowed to put on, to accept the grant and authorize town manager to execute all documents related to the grant award. Somebody wants to make that? Oh, you have to move it? Would somebody second that one?
I'll second it.
Okay, thank you. Any further discussion on that? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes. I think we just leave the further move off for when we get the award approved. Okay?
Great.
Okay, thank you. All right. The next item is the ambulance discussion. Thanks, Tom.
thanks, Tom.
Thanks, everybody, have a good night.
Thanks.
So this is an item, I just want to give a little background on this item. We had a meeting on December 19th. And it was a meeting between the Board of Finance and the Board of Selectmen with the Simsbury Ambulance Association. Lee Erdman had worked with the executive director of the SBAA to come up with some options and solutions for the future. Previously, the Board of Selectmen approved $150,000 in ARPA funding in 22-23 to supplement the second ambulance to serve the community from 7 to 7. The presentation brought up a lot of additional the potential for additional requests this coming budget, and potentially in the future. And as a board, we did not really have an opportunity to discuss this as together. I mean, we were allowed to ask questions via email to the SVAA board and the executive director, but to not bring it to the public. I do wanna thank the SVAA and the board for that presentation and for answering questions at the meeting, but I wanted to bring the opportunity for board members to ask questions that we could compile with the help of the town manager and deputy town manager, and ask the SVAA within reason to address the questions and see if there's information that we may be able to get before Mark and the team and us face the budget requests that are coming. So with that, I didn't ask for questions in advance. I did ask people to prepare questions in advance. So I think the best way to do this would be to potentially go down the line. Everybody, because we may probably have questions, similar questions, I would guess. Or start, I'd like to offer it up to Steve if you have questions, or do you wanna kick things off?
I do, well, I
Or-
will, but they're questions, I don't know the answer. But financially, I'm still having a little struggle, if you will. I went online and I did try to find more information financially as to the SVAA, which they do have to release some figures publicly, but it's not a very detailed orientation. And I do see where the revenue and expenses are slightly offset, meaning there are less revenues than expenses, and that theoretically is what we're making up. But I still would like to know if there is a place that we can procure more financial details. Just like when you go for a bank note, they wanna know what you got, why you know, how it's going to be used and things like that. And just to be upfront, I love our Simsbury Volunteer Ambulance Association, I support them full force. But I would like to know financially to be secure in what's going on. That would be my first question. The other one is something that's gone back and forth that again, I'm just not clear on. I could be educated on it. But if we are gonna be taking more and more of a financial stake in the Volunteer Ambulance Association, it is my understanding we don't have a direct representative on the board. And I have no problem supporting the Ambulance Association, but just like anyone else, whether it be a child or whatever, you do want to just see that everything's going in order, not to participate in a manner that you are going to be steering the ship, if you will. But I feel we would wanna have somebody in a monitoring capacity to see that everything is going well, if you will. And there's enough money for that matter, not only that there's, not enough, but that there's the appropriate amount of support. So do you understand?
Yeah, I do. Well, I just wanna address the representation on the board. In the initial MOU, which we put in place, which was to be able to award the 150, we did assign a liaison to the SVAA, which is Heather, which is the public safety chair. It was Sean Askham last time. So that was one thing. That could be something that we ask for as we look forward to what we're gonna do for fiscal year 24-25 for discussion. But right now we do have, so I have the question is to make sure that our liaison is invited to the board meetings to sit in and listen in as liaison. And I guess your question is, when we bring this back, do we wanna ask for a full representative on the board? And then
In a position not so much to steer, but to be able to monitor all aspects. Full disclosure, if you will.
Okay, I'm filling in just stuff, and also I would just wanna weigh in that in the MOU, the SVA is supposed to report at each public safety meeting on some of their numbers too. So I think we can look at that as we look to financing next year. It may or may not be a question for the board, it may be an insistence of us, right? When we get to that point, but that is a good point. But getting back to the financial details, I guess I would ask if others have questions around the finances that we wanna focus in on.
Yeah, Diana.
Oh, Diana does,
I do.
to round that
So-
out maybe in a
Yeah.
better manner.
I have two questions about the finances. One, which is what I asked at the time, and I'm gonna ask officially again now because I would like them to come back with answers, is in the reporting, you know, they use this subset of peer towns, and I had asked what, you know, for both the financial reporting versus what Simsbury is doing in salaries and costs, but also in the call numbers, etc. How did they come up with those peer towns? Are they really our peer towns? But more importantly, how do those numbers compare to the mutual aid towns that we are working with currently? Because those are the towns that we are calling and we're supporting outside our town and we're coming into our town. And I understand that they may have a completely different financial picture and how they are funded, but I still think it is important to understand from our mutual aid towns, what is the comparison there? What does that look like? And how is that impacting Simsbury? And on that level, for the mutual aid towns, I'd also like to see numbers of the comparison of how much mutual aid Simsbury is getting out versus how much mutual aid Simsbury is getting in. And I know that it can vary, and I know it's call by call and it could be situational, but are we a balanced mutual aid in a balanced mutual aid agreement? Or are we doing more calls to a particular town than we're getting support on? The other financial question is when it comes down to it all said and done, we're gonna make this decision and they're coming up with a number. I wanna make sure if we agree to fund, that we are funding appropriately. What exactly are we looking for? What exactly are we looking to have in our ambulance service in town and be funded appropriately? So it's not that they're coming at this number and then they realize it's either we've either overfunded or they're coming in short again because you know, we look at the history that's happened over the last several years and they've needed support. We want to make sure that if we're going to be funding them, we're funding them appropriately, and I want to make sure that the numbers make sense to fund them appropriately for what we as a town are looking for our ambulance services.
So along Diane's line, you know, I agree with what she's saying. My concern, we're going to start funding something that is flawed. And I struggle to believe that the number isn't going to continue to grow in their need. So I think we really need to look at that. What are ways for them to become more efficient? You know, and have they ever explored anything else, a subscription model? You know, has anything else really been explored? Have they ever discussed regionalizing with our mutual aid partners as a start? Is that something that they've ever had a discussion on? And then I also had, if we are, I know part of it was providing the money, but also was part of adding them similar to our school bus system, where we are providing an ambulance every few years. And I was wondering if we should look at, if we're providing them an ambulance, who owns the ambulance? Is that something that the town should take on as an asset in case we change our ambulance system? We have the ambulance, or is it best sitting in their asset pool? And then also along the accountability, transparency when it comes to FOIA and the board member seats, so those were where I was looking.
Questions, so I don't want to.
So similar to what Diana said, the amount of calls from out of town, the regional partners. And then also too, they had showed us a chart where they were showing it's gonna break even, I think it's in 2 to 4 years. something like that.
28.
Yeah, so and I remember asking the question at the time, like how can you project it when you've never broken even? And I think he said that using averages over the last few years, but my question is, I don't see how those numbers can get together in 4 years, but just more proof as to how they're coming about getting those numbers. And basically, they're gonna need more money from us, so.
So one of the things that disturbed me in the conversation about funding, and I think it's a really difficult conversation for all of us to have, because even with the difficulty and balance with mutual aid, none of us would wanna have, ourselves or somebody that we know or love, be that second call. And we could all get into a circumstance where even a third bus was needed and it wasn't available, and that's tragic for so many reasons. But if this amount of money is being required to substantiate a significant portion of their budget, I would have anticipated and would like to ask from them a period of performance, a scope of work that allows us to have measures and metrics and standards to go off of, that we can evaluate success. It's helpful for them, because when they come to us next year, or we're all having this conversation and they are able to demonstrate that they've met the standards that were agreed to. But for us to come and try to establish those on our own, this isn't my business. I don't know ambulance and emergency response well enough, and our town staff and our partners in town staff know their portions well, but I would hope that they know their business well enough they can at least start with that and help us come along that journey with them. If I were to apply for this grant, and the grant, for instance, we were talking about the HVAC system that we're gonna do for there's gonna be those pieces that I'm talking about that the state is gonna expect. And so I think as a town, we should expect that to come from the SVAA also. With regard to the board and seat, I don't know that it's necessarily gonna help unless we have those other things, whether you have a seat or not. And I don't know what the conduct of those board meetings are like, if it's very amiable or if they get really down deep into the operations. There's very much policy setting, boards, and there's very much nitty-gritty operational boards. And I don't know what those boards are like, but I do think that we should be able to get those metrics and the financial information without regard to whether or not we have a voting seat or participation in a meeting. I would say though that I would think that we would wanna, even though it would maybe benefit us, we would wanna have some pause in requiring that we have a seat on a board of an organization that we support. I support the Simsbury Community Media, the TV, the town, provides some funding there. Same thing with Main Street. We support that, but do we ex officio have to have a seat on that board? I think we'd accomplish the outcomes that we want without necessarily having a board representative there, but I do know why we're asking, and because that's the other tough issue that I don't think has been put on the table or resolved yet. There are some significant concerns, justified or not, about management of the organization, and I think we need to put those on the table and have a discussion about them and evaluate it. And I would like to hear from the SVA board a better response on that. I think we all know what we're talking about, but I also don't think that it's easy for us in a public context to have that out. So in some way, we need to identify that, name it, and either get past it or find a way to move around it. So that's my thought. Hopefully we can put all this together into something that we can request of them, and thank you, Heather, for being the chair of public safety.
Oh, I have some questions too, but I'll let Diana go since she's on.
Sorry, I forgot I had one more question and comment, is I'd also like to know what their history is for grants that they have received or applied for, and what is their plan for future grants, because there is grants out there, and I wanna know if there's things that they have utilized in the past or have planned to utilize in the future. Because I happen to know, I was at the CCM conference on Saturday, and they talked about a firefighter who worked on a grant for their town and got $1 million for a new truck. So, I think that if SBAA is not applying for grants, then that's something that absolutely should be looked at.
So
Okay. Oh,
that question was brought up at our tri-board meeting, and we pointed out that there were a couple of towns that had received a few grants. I think the largest was maybe around 52,000 or something like that. But they had said that they're incredibly, if I recall correctly, that they're incredibly difficult to get, they're very limited, and that the amount that you can get them for is not going to provide an ambulance or the things that they are looking for. So I believe that that was a somewhat of the answer that we had received, but I agree. I mean, if there's something where there's an ability or somehow to apply for an ambulance, that add it to the list, but I just had recalled that it did come up already.
Thank you.
So, yeah, I actually, I made a real list of questions, like, I did have the grants, so I think that's great that everyone noticed that. My question on that, because I thought I read in there that Ellington and Windsor received grants in the 250K area, and I'm pretty I put those numbers down. You know, so however they adjust it, do they need someone or have somebody that can apply for these grants, like internally, would be the question I would ask, and if not, that might be somewhere they get somebody to help do that, because it's gonna offset costs from us. One other question I had on the financial end, just to go back to the financials, was you know, who is their financial manager of SVAA? Like, I know that they have the position of the executive director, the deputy chief of admin, and the deputy chief of operations, but who's responsible for financial management of SVAA? So that's a fairly just a straightforward question. And it kind of goes along with, you know, Kevin getting the reporting and who's doing that for them, right? One other question that I asked there, and I'm gonna ask again, and maybe it's not available, but and I think it's been referenced here, is you know, comparative salaries, benefits, bonuses for the paid leadership team. I noticed that I believe they have an executive director, deputy chief of admin, deputy chief of operations. I assume those are all the paid upper level positions. But if I look at a town like Suffield, who Heather pointed out in the meeting, because their numbers were kind of off the charts, they have one chief of the fire company, they have a board of directors, and then they have a board of trustees. And I'm not familiar with a lot of these roles, but you know, are there different roles that would help with oversight or reporting or something like that? But I just would like to ask, if possible, you know, is there a comparative chart of our salaries for the SVAA versus neighboring towns or the comparative towns, to make sure that we're paying what with bonus, with benefits and stuff like that, you know, the compensation study piece. We did get hourly wages, I did get that from Karen. I'm not sure if that was shared, but I do have those figures and I could forward that email, but I didn't get anything on the salaries, and maybe it's not shareable, but it is something that would be good to understand since the funding. The other question I was going to ask about is just to confirm in the recommendation, and if they're gonna ask for this, Lee had mentioned the payoff of the loan amounts, that they may ask for that in the potentially in the fiscal year 24-25. And they did mention the amounts, but if somebody could document what we would be asked to pay for that. The other question was on donations. You know, they asked the town for assistance with pursuing donations, or how we could help, you know, message the donations. I just was curious, like, what does that involve? What is the ask there, you know, to improve that? What are the resource needs of the town if we assist with that request? Another question that was brought up, again, it would be nice to just, like I said, if we're gonna get a document and get answers, it's been talked about a few times, and I think they did talk about this there, but was charging for calls that don't result in a transit, which they don't wanna do that because it's obviously not the best thing, but you know, are other towns doing that? I don't remember what they said, and if that's the case, is that a way, you know, to have some sort of compromise there? The other issue I just wanted to bring up, it's not necessarily a question for them, but it came up here is, are they subject, if we give them funding as a public, entity, will they be subject to FOIA requirements? Does that, what will they have to provide if we start funding what they're doing? Sorry about my questions, but I did rate them. And then another question that I saw was, so they have hourly employees, per diem, and volunteers, right? And I assume it's the executive director who schedules the work of those teams. One of the questions I had was, is there a way to use more volunteers to cover the second ambulance to keep the costs lower because they're volunteers? So I don't know how you word that, it maybe is a silly question, but and then I also had the same question is, how do these numbers add up to be fine in 2028? It's kind of a rhetorical question, but so I think that's my questions. Anybody else have any more that they wanna add, or if you wanna comment on any of these and add to them, or say that, you heard the answer and we have that answer somewhere. Anybody? Diana?
So what, regarding the volunteers to cover the second ambulance,
Yeah.
I do believe in, I don't know if it was brought up in that or with a meeting that I had with Karen, but it was pointed out that the volunteers that they have are usually used for very specific duties, potentially driver, versus in the back doing hands-on, because they're often, the volunteers they're getting right now are often in medical school and getting ambulance training that through their Yukon or whatever, and so they're utilizing those volunteers for like the drivers rather than the hands-on in the back of the bus type things. But it certainly asked the question, but I do believe that was one of the clarifying points about volunteers versus paid in the ambulance.
Okay, thank you. I do like the question about the potential future ask for the box style ambulance, Heather's point, that is it a town asset? Would we be able to depreciate, right? I think that's a really good question. I had the question around that too, that if it does come to us, that we should really evaluate purchasing the van versus the box and what the trade-off is there, because that's a $200,000 difference in cost, if that ends up coming to the table for us, if that is something that could be handled. So Tom, Mark, you guys could work your magic on what you heard here, and
We'll work some magic, that's probably a appropriate term. So if I let me throw something out and see if it meets with the board's approval. So what we could do is try to synthesize a writing that incorporates these questions, some of which I think overlap.
yeah,
Couple of which, I think I'd recommend would be at least non-starters at the beginning of the conversation, which is whether or not we would wanna own the vehicle. Let's leave that aside for the moment, right? Because we've got, I think I heard a lot of really good questions about, just the board's comfort level with this level of financial commitment. For me, having been at the meeting, and as you know, I asked some tough questions myself, and to Curtis's point, I think my biggest challenge with the presentation that we saw was that I was not convinced that it becomes sustainable in the out years, which was the claim that was made. And I think that's my biggest concern with the proposal that we heard that night. And so I would have some questions that, with the board's permission, I would incorporate with yours as well. And then maybe I think with those members of the board that would wanna participate, have a one-on-one or a two-on-two meeting with them. Show them the draft letter, give them a heads up that these are the types of questions we're gonna ask them. I will tell you that, my coming in, and again, it's just my first day on this, but I've been following it since that meeting. This is a challenge that municipalities are facing all over the country. I think one of the things I'd like to do is pursue potentially a federal earmark grant to help the town with this, because it's a sort of thing that I think would be, and that's a little different than a conventional grant application where we're just going to our federal partners and asking for financial support. That's one thing. The second thing, and just my notes in no particular order, if the ask is for X dollars, and let's say the board is inclined to agree with that, given the answers that we get to this letter, we could frame that contribution in a couple of different ways. One is we could take that top line number, whatever it is we're funding them, and say part of that money is gonna be direct funding of a grant writer who would be a shared resource with the town and the SVAA. In other words, that person would be an FTE here. We would be funding that person's salaries, benefits and everything, and 50% of their time is, at least in the first year, looking for grants that would sustain this. And then if, let's say they become more fiscally solvent as the years go on, our grant writer can start to phase more work in for the town, and maybe the SVAA can take on some of that. But my preliminary analysis, early days, is that we could all use more help writing grants, right? It's not just the SVAA. So I think, I see Diana, nodding yes. I think that, and we're entering the budget cycle, I'd be more than willing and happy, in fact, to recommend to the approvers, BOS, BOF, that we get a grant writer. If there's any additional FTEs that you see coming out of my budget, the question would be, why not a grant writer? And share that resource with the SVAA. That's, to my mind, the only way we're gonna be assured, and the board is gonna be assured, no disrespect, that those applications are getting in timely and that they're being made and what the results are. So that's one. The second thing I'd like the board to consider is that, if we're gonna fund them, that some of that funding needs to go for a financial consultant. And the question I heard was, well, who is the financial consultant and who's doing it? I would take that one step further. I'd suggest to the board that under this agreement, which again is probably not just for year two, but conceivably for a number of years, that we want a financial consultant that is chosen by the town of Simsbury and is doing the job. So those are just some of my scribbled notes. I'd be glad to talk to any members of the board offline, but I think our first goal is to frame a draft letter that outlines the questions we've heard.
I have a quick question on the grant writing.
Yep.
Cause I agree, I think that across the board, you could always use a grant writer, but who's looking for the grants to apply for? So would it be the
It would
ambulance
be-
is
it
looking and
would-
bringing it to the grant writer, or the grant writer
Under
searching?
under my proposal, the grant writer is a town employee who's looking for the grants, and we're not relying on the SVA to come to us and say, oh, we've identified these grants and we think, can you help us do the paperwork? No, our individual would be looking for the grants and having these conversations with our state and federal partners.
So I look forward to seeing those ideas at during the budget. They sound like good ideas. I just would like to get a consensus from the board that what Mark proposed and how they're gonna attack this letter makes sense to everybody. I agree consensually.
My only thought is what Mark described, I think, is an outstanding solution that's separate from the questions I wanna ask SVAA.
Yeah.
I think we had some specific questions. I think that's excellent solutioning on what we might wanna do when we get the answers.
Right, and that's what I'm saying, they would be presented to us at the budget. I think they're great ideas. But as far as the consensus goes on the memo and the way it's been described, I think we're all good with that to go forward. Okay, so on that note, we are at the minutes. I do wanna call out that the executive session, there will be no executive session tonight. I don't think I need to make a motion to take that off the agenda.
No.
I didn't know the town attorney was not able to attend. So we have two sets of minutes tonight, and I will follow Kevin's recommendation to ask for the motion on the December 18th, so then we could have discussion to correct them. So
Sure. I'll move to approve the minutes of the December 18th meeting.
I'll second it.
Okay. I just have
Any discussion?
I have some discussion.
Well, like we have to say any discussion, so okay,
So,
we're in
any-
discussion now.
Just one point on the formatting, it's a minor issue, but just for readability, after Pledge of Allegiance, it it says that everyone stood, but then it doesn't actually talk about the public audience. I would just call it out as a header that the public audience started at that point. And then on page, I guess it's actually 2 of the minutes, it's under the liaison on subcommittee reports, the portion of my report, it was a request by Mr. Scully and the Sustainability Committee for a sustainability coordinator position versus a rule that would bridge the gap. So I just changed the word rule to coordinator position. That's all the edits from me at this time.
Okay, I have an edit. I am going to ask for a correction on, where is that? On page 4, under the minutes of the December 4th meeting. In the correction that I made at the last meeting was on the vote for doing the hiring Harrington. And it was Mr. Beal and Ms. Maxudis who were in favor of the motion, with Mr. Antonio, Getz, Yaisley, and Looney against, and that's why that failed. So the correction to the correction. Does anyone else have any discussion or corrections for the December 18th minutes? Okay, with that, all those in favor of moving them as amended, I got it. Say aye. Aye. Okay. Okay, I make a motion, I'll make the motion for the December 4th meeting minutes to approve those. Second, is there any discussion on the December 4th meeting minutes? If there's any changes to that? No. Didn't need a motion then. All those in favor to approve those minutes, say aye. Aye, okay, those minutes are approved, and I believe, oh, and I just wanna point out again, the communication section, Kristen is not on the call, correct? To discuss, okay,
No.
there was a lot of information in the communication section on how to apply for energy assistance and the guidelines on that, so anyone interested, please look at that. So I'll look for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
So moved.
You, Diana, you have to say second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, we're adjourned. Thank you.